Hi guys, today I will talk about definitions and descriptions. I will answer the question, what does it mean when somebody says it's true for me about something you consider not to be true? I will explain why this doesn't necessarily mean that one of you are wrong. So Bella is here with us today. My personal experience is that disagreements are often treated like conflicts. People get frustrated. While I think of disagreements as opportunities to explore new ways of thinking about things, and sometimes I even get excited when I discover that somebody disagrees with me, often others react with frustration and despair and sometimes even anger. I will start by repeating some of what I have talked about in earlier videos about the relationship between knowledge and the truth. When we're talking about truth, we are in the realm of knowledge. Due to my skepticism, I have objections to the justified true belief definition of knowledge, which seems to be the one that most scholars use. I don't agree with the true part. My definition of knowledge is sufficiently justified belief. In my mind, all information that one holds to be true is to some degree up for revision. Knowledge is in the category of belief, and there is a soft transition between just belief and sufficiently justified belief that I call knowledge. This is explained in the video Intuition as it relates to knowledge. Words are labels that we use to refer to concepts. It would be an ideal if the concepts we think of when we use words would perfectly align with the concepts others think of. Unfortunately, this is utopian. We are all different and have different experiences and backgrounds. Words are also used for different purposes in different contexts, even in academia. The same word can have different meanings in quite similar fields such as psychology and sociology. Concepts also have other uses than just for communication. They are how we understand the world. The way I think of this is that my concepts are forming a patchwork of understandings, a network. I want this network to, in as large degree as possible, to cover my whole understanding of everything, my worldview. A definition in this context is an abbreviation of the understanding we have of what the concept contains. All of this goes on in one's own mind, or as I like to say it, in internal reality. Even if you are going along with a definition you have found in a dictionary or encyclopedia, or if you have formed the definition through experience with how the word is used by others, you have a choice of whether one definition or another fits with the concept as it is formed in your mind. For the most part, one will go along with a definition that intuitively feels right. In some cases, one can use analytic method to sort which is what, but it would take a lifetime for one person to analyze the whole language this way. Of course, if you have a proficiency or you have studied something at school or university, there is no way around going along with the concept as it is defined within that field. But this doesn't mean that just because you have learned a definition this way, this is the only right way to use that word. Definitions don't have a truth value. They are just definitions. This is crucial to understand when you're conversating with somebody that don't agree with you. So you can't say that others' definitions are objectively wrong. But there are other ways to evaluate them, like whether they align with other people's definitions, or if they are useful when describing the things or connections that they are intended to describe, so that they serve the purpose. Descriptions, on the other hand, are true or false. They either align with the observed phenomena or they don't. A description can be as simple as pointing to a thing and saying what we understand that thing to be. Like pointing to a plant and saying that's a bush. We describe that thing as a bush. Or it can be complex, taking a book to describe. Also in descriptions we are using definitions, so there is the added question of whether the definition used in the description align with how we understand them. This is the reason something can be true for someone and at the same time not true for someone else. The definitions used are different. Like in the example above, when somebody points to a plant and say that's a bush, you might think of it as a tree. When we're talking about simple and concrete things like a bush, it might be easy to clear up these differences. But for more complex concepts, this can be more difficult. So if one hasn't agreed on a specific set of definitions that both parties are familiar with, disagreements are to be expected. My advice would be that if you encounter disagreements, don't get stuck on trying to rationalize your view over and over again. What I would advise is instead to go through the concepts involved and see if the difference can be explained by a simple difference in definitions. Ask your proponent questions like, "What's your view on this?" and so on. Also, it's important to be aware that one can define things into and out of existence in external reality by introducing or removing elements in the definition. Exemplary, a horse, which exists, with a single horn in the forehead, which don't exist. Another way is to introduce contradictory information, and in this way creating paradoxes. Exemplary, like in a debate I recently had on an atheist forum on Facebook, the ages-old question about free will and omniscience came up. Someone made the comment that if God is omniscient, free will is impossible. I pointed out that this is only true if one presupposes determinism. More specifically, if one defines omniscience in such a way that an omniscient God knows everything that is going to happen in the future must be knowable. Omniscience means all-knowing in Greek. For the future to be knowable, determinism must be true. If, on the other hand, there is any kind of randomness in the universe, the future is unknowable and thus not included in all knowledge. Free will, in a libertarian interpretation, will in effect work as a randomizer on the universe. At this point, my debate proponent claimed that the literal definition of omniscience includes knowledge of the future, that this was not debatable, and that this makes the notion of there being a God impossible. What they are doing is that they, in principle, set up a paradox which in effect defines God out of existence. I replied by simply posting an overview over different interpretation of omniscience that has been proposed. The debate was already over anyway. I sort of expect that in debate people apply the principle of charity. According to Wikipedia, the principle of charity is described like this. In philosophy and rhetoric, the principle of charity requires interpreting a speaker's statements in the most rational way possible. And in the case of argument, considering the best, strongest possible interpretation. In the narrowest sense, the goal of this methodological principle is to avoid attributing irrationality, logical fallacies and falsehoods to the other statements, when a coherent, rational interpretation of the statement is available. I talk more in depth about determinism and randomness in my video. Non-determinism makes more sense. Wrapping things up. I think that people's mistaken belief that words only have one true definition and that anyone disagreeing with this are objectively wrong is one of the biggest sources of conflict and strife in the world. In the video, I hope I have answered the question, how can something be true for someone even if it's not true for someone else or you? I have talked about definitions which are to be expected to be different from person to person, and descriptions which, in contrast to definitions, are either true or false depending on which definitions are used. and thus explains why something can be true for someone when it's at the same time false for someone else. I also want to clear up something. I don't encourage anyone to define words in strange and novel ways, creating their own language. I see ambiguity of language as a matter of fact. The ideal should be for words in the language to be as good as possible for the different purposes they serve. But I hope this has been helpful for you if you have been frustrated over conversations that get stuck and you don't understand why. An interesting thought that emerges from this perspective, that what is true in some cases can be something that is private to you, due to your individual structure of definitions, is whether truth rather should be evaluated on the basis of utility. Now I recommend you to go and see one of the videos I have referenced, Intuition as it relates to knowledge, Perception, what seems to be going on, or Non-determinism makes more sense. All links will be in the description. Or if you rather want to see something different, I recommend you go and see a Rationality Rules video. It's True for Me, Debunked. Thank you for the view, and have a nice day.